Has anyone had a celebrity NSFW encounter? What's your story? Back in the 90s, when Jean-Claude Van Damme was the it, a relative was at a Vegas hotel and went down to use the sauna. He was in there shooting the it with a business partner and in walks Van Damme. He says, "If you are who I think you are Major Camp's favorite action star," and Van Damme confirmed and told him to tell me hello from him. Everyone was nude. Edit. I realize it may be normal to be nude in a sauna, but this is the best story I can offer. This is actually from a director I worked with. In the 80s, he was hired as a backstage dresser for a Broadway show that had Patti LuPone in it, and it was his first show. I don't remember what the show was, but there was a scene where she runs off stage. He was instructed to stand right off stage and hold his hands out at a very specific position, which is common in quick change situations where an actor might have to hand off or literally throw a costume piece to make their change. What actually happened is that his hands were in the perfect position to get 2 handfuls of boob. As she ran off stage, she pulled her breasts out so that he would grab them. Apparently she likes pranking new crew members. A guy walked by me at the airport as I sat waiting to board, and kid you not, farted mere inches from my face. I looked up. It was Bon Jovi. Billy Joe Armstrong, Green Day, told Trecool, their drummer, to suck my D. Instead he gave me some orange soda. I'm straight. It worked out. Saw Tim Allen's mistress sprinting out of his trailer after his wife showed up at the set of one of those Santa Claus movies he was filming. I was shooting behind the scenes photos of a D-list celebrity boxing tournament in college. After a long day of witnessing the power of egos and 15 minutes of fame, the Octomom giving me Advil for my back, Coolio calling me a G, and seeing Jose Canseco put on fake tattoo sleeves, I was ready for drink. I had been talking to an absolutely beautiful ring girl and she wanted to join me for a beer after the fights ended. We went upstairs to the bar and she went to get us a table. I went over to the bar and while waiting for the drinks, ducking Ron Jeremy himself came up next to me. He said he had seen me talking to the girl all night and offered to wingman for me. Luckily my confidence was already sky high for already getting the girl to come drink with me, so I politely declined and went to join her waiting at a table nearby. He told me to stick my thumb in her butt later for him. Edit. I failed all of you that night. Reddit. We made out for a bit but she had a flight to catch and I had to drive home. Talk for a bit over texting but she was never back in my area. Here is a pic of me and the gal. I don't think I still have the rest of the images. I had a friend who met Jason Segel at a bar in LA. She said he was fairly drunk and all over the place with their conversation. At point he just point blank said to her, "So are we gonna have a six?" She said, "No." He responded okay and then just walked away back to his table. I was next to the table of Leo DiCaprio at Catch in NY. Saw him get with an 18-year-old IMG model then proceeded to take her home. Saw them leave together like it was nothing. The girl had the biggest smile on her face too. I once nailed Eartha Kitt in an airplane bathroom. I worked my way through college as a waiter in a gummet room in Las Vegas. I became acquainted with Florence Henderson, RIP, and she would ask to sit in my station. One evening she had a guest, Joan Rivers, me. Henderson had a favorite wine, Peace Porter, that she always ordered. It just so happened that on our wine list, that wine was labeled as number 69. That's how she ordered it. I'll have a bottle of 69. On this night, I approached the table, introduced myself to Mrs. Rivers and made the usual small talk. Then I asked, "So Mrs. Henderson, would you like a little 69 tonight?" OMG. Joan Rivers went completely insane. She started screaming and yelling and demanding security to have me fired and arrested. And the whole time, Florence Henderson is trying to calm her down and explain. Long story short, the maitre d' put me in another area and not long after I graduated and left that job. And I never forgot that story. This happened in 1985. I went to a pool party in LA around 2002 and there was a guy named Michael Bubble there. I don't think anyone had heard of him at the time. I remember meeting him only because my friend made fun of him when he introduced himself by calling him Michael Googly Moogly, which was a reference to a line in a Snickers commercial. For the rest of the night he was known as Googly Moogly. Later that night, I walked into the bathroom in the guest house and he was taking a it. I think it was about a year or two later that he became a big deal. Not really NSFW, but I was at a hotel in South Africa looking for the bathroom when I got lost and ran into Lawrence Fishburne in a hallway. I pretended like I didn't know who he was and asked if he knew where the bathroom was, like I probably would have asked anyone. Anyway, he was a very nice guy and walked me to the bathroom where he said, "The men's room is on the left, the women's room is on the right. The choice is yours." I almost died. Did a gig with the band Less Than Jake many years ago as a sound guy. They arrived at the venue, bigger than life, promising the whole local crew we'd have a great time. And at the end of the night, beer and blowjobs for all. Can't beat that, right? Show ends. Truck's loaded. Singer is still hanging around and I walk up to him. He gives me a big hug and says something like, "Didn't I tell you it'd be a good time? Didn't I promise?" In fact it had. It was a good night. But I turned to my new best friend and said it was. But I don't drink and my D's still in my pants. This place is pretty empty and I'm here hugging you. Chris, the singer, isn't a particularly large guy. I am. There was a moment of absolute fear in his eyes as I hugged him tighter until he realized I was just kidding. We ended our embrace. They got into their bus and away they went. Fast forward almost a year. Less Than Jake is playing the Warped Tour and I'm in the crowd. During their set, Chris and I make eye contact, and he remembers me. How do I know? He proceeds to yell into his mic, "Hey, somebody suck that guy's D," and then point at me while pretending to blow his microphone. I'm still a fan. I rode in a hotel elevator with Red Sox pitcher Derek Lowe at like 2 in the morning while he was making out with 2 women at the same time. When I was around 13, my cousin surprised me and took me to Leonardo DiCaprio's house. My cousin's newlywed husband was very good friends with him. This was around 15 years ago too, when Leo was in his absolute prime, and unbeknownst to him I was completely and utterly obsessed. I'll never forget sitting on his white leather couch just waiting for him to walk into the room we were all in, and out he came with a trail of smoke behind him, high as a kite with a fat joint in between his fingers. And I mean he was high AF. I didn't even recognize him due to his scruffy beard and long matted hair. Not really NSFW, but pretty funny that I was expecting him to look like Jack from the Titanic, but he could have passed as the dude. I was in a very massive men's room at a venue taking a piss. I was about 15 urinals deep and bathroom was completely empty, as far as I could tell. Besides me, in walks Jack Black. He walks right up to the urinal next to me. Nothing weird happened, but I always found it bizarre that he didn't space himself out better. That's a man code violation. Me and my dad met Rick Astley. I shook his hand. Said big fan. Dad didn't shake his hand, sorry. My hands are sticky. Rick smiles and says my hands are usually sticky too. Then grins. In early 2013 a female friend and I went to an after party that Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, was DJing at after one of his concerts in Sydney. After his DJ set, we were smoking outside when Donald exits the venue through a side door. We looked over at him and he immediately approaches us and introduces himself. Right from the get-go, my friend starts flirting with him hard. He asks us if we had any weed. We did. And he invited us back to his hotel to smoke with him. We ended up on the balcony of his hotel suite along with a couple of other guys smoking a blunt. My friend is all over him. I've never seen her try so hard to get with a guy. I could tell from pretty early on that he wasn't into it at all. He was staring off into the distance and ignoring her or responding with one-word answers. After about half an hour, he stands up and says, "I'm going to bed." My friend asks him if she should come, to which he looks her dead in the eye and says, "I honestly don't give a duck what you do," and walks off. We left soon after that. About a year later I read an interview with him where he said that he tried to kill himself on that Australian tour. In hindsight the way he was acting definitely seemed like someone who was depressed. Not sure if Alexis Texas classifies as celeb, but she did take off her thong and stuff it in my face during one of her strip shows. My sister ran into Matthew McConaughey in a bar years ago. They hit it off, and they went back to her place. She got overwhelmed by nerves and said she had to go run out to her car to get something. She sat in her car freaking out for God knows how long until he eventually gave up and left. Must have baffled the poor guy. I was at a Jim Jeffries stand-up show in Dallas. Sure enough, he pounds over 10 beers doing his routine. After the show he's hanging at the bar belligerently drunk. My friend and I head over to say what's up. Before we could say anything, Jim grabs my friend, forcefully bends him over and pretends to duck him in the ass in front of everyone there. Best night of my friend's life. Friend of ours is a hotel hospitality manager. She was alone in a room with Russell Brand. He very politely offered to have a sex with her. She said her husband was waiting downstairs for her. Brand said he could come up too. One of my favorite movies growing up was Crocodile Dundee. Much later in life I am hanging out with a girl at a hotel bar in San Diego, and Paul Hogan was there. We put down a few drinks, then I figured I would go say what's up and tell him how I loved Crocodile Dundee and see if I could get an autograph. My Nokia brick. No camera. I was drunk, remember the interaction pretty clearly. I went over to chat and he was not that cool, which was fine. But then started asking about the girl I was with and if she would like an autograph. That led to him propositioning me for what I thought would be a threesome. I was entertaining this idea, as the thought of tag teaming this girl, who I was not officially dating, with Mick Dundee would be pretty cool. So she came over and everything was really cool. I was planning on pulling out my wang once we went to the room and being like, you call that a D? This is a D. Fast forward 10 minutes and he said, why don't we go up to my room? That we didn't include me. I got to sit at the bar while the chick got raw dogged by Mick Dundee. And he never gave me that autograph or came back down. Plus, on the way home, she was wearing a skirt and released a bunch of his nut on the back seat of the cab. I am not sure which hole it came out of, but assuming the back one. Still love Crocodile Dundee. Edit. I am getting a ton of messages saying why did I go home with her? We were friends with benefits and worked together at a bar and were out as friends. We shared a cab home and saw her the next evening and had some laughs. Ezekiel Elliott told me to go duck myself. Went to the U2 concert in LA a couple years back and saw Pierce Brosnan walking through the parking lot of the Forum. As I walked by I said Bond, James Bond. He gave me the most revolting look and said ducking wanker. Totally made my day. I'm a Mexican guy that works at Home Depot. Rob Schneider used to come in a lot. Friend was pissing next to Shaq at a club in Miami. Of course he can't keep his eyes on the road and tried to sneak a peek at Shaq's junk. Shaq turns to him, smiles and says, crazy right? Big Nia. Regular D. Not really NSFW. But I know a dude who danced with Renee Zellweger at a wedding and dropped her while doing so. Wasn't real safe for her, I guess. I live in Las Vegas and often see celebrities here. One time on summer vacation while in high school in the mid-90s when I was 16 and just got my driver's license. I was at the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace with a friend and there was a crowd outside the Versace store, so we went over to see what was going on. Mike Tyson and his entourage were shopping inside and they locked the doors for him. After a while they all disappeared into the back of the store and we realized from having had a part-time job at the mall they were headed to employee parking behind the store. We ran down the corridor next to the store and headed outside where his crew were loading up Persian rugs and shopping bags into a Range Rover while Iron Mike was putting on a helmet and jumping onto a sport bike. My buddy and I stopped waving at him and right as he makes eye contact my friend switches from a wave to flipping him off. Mike ripped off the helmet and started shouting obscenities at us while we ran back into the mall eating ourselves. I was working on a behind the scenes featurette for a movie starring Keanu Reeves and Renee Zellweger. I had to wire the lav under Renee's shirt and clip it to her bra, and I totally accidentally grabbed her boob. She looked me right in the eye and said, "Geez, buy me a drink, okay?" I shook Bruce Campbell's hand. 2 minutes earlier I had beated my meat and did not wash my hands. Sorry Bruce, love you. Andy D tried to pull me into a bathroom after we did some blow together at a party in Hollywood Hills. I pulled away but he took my best friend who's a total fiend. He never told me what exactly happened. Edit, it appears all of Reddit has a NSFW Andy D story. I saw myself naked once or twice. Not exactly a celebrity at the moment, but this drunk guy said I had potential. David Spade is exactly the asshole you'd expect him to be. He opened for Bobcat Goldthwait and my roommate's best friend was Bobcat's brother. I got to go backstage after the show and we were sitting in a circle with Bob's brother and there was another group of people just standing off to the side. Bob came out of the shower and sat down next to me and started talking. Genuinely a good guy. Spent 20 minutes talking with him. One of the people standing off to the side was a girl on crutches. I felt bad so I suggested that they pull up a chair and join us. To help her I got up and pulled a chair over for her. I turned around and Spade took my seat. Flipped me the bird and told me to duck off. The day he got tased by his bodyguard was a glorious one. My mom grew up with Rob Lowe as her neighbor. She dated him in middle school and they were apparently found making out in a closet at school one time. She says that he was one of those kissers that uses enough tongue to lick your vocal cords. 2 reality TV stars have seen my D. One was on Survivor. The other was on Biggest Loser. The one on Biggest Loser sucked it. The other one watched me piss in a cup for a drug test. I once motioned for Brittany Snow to sign her Maxim Hot 100 photo. She pushed her hair in front of her face and gave me the cold shoulder. That was definitely the most awkward wait for a plane restroom I've ever experienced. She just stood there facing the wall like some ducking Blair Witch victim. I ran into Danny McBride at the San Diego Comic Con this year. I was riding the elevator alone in my hotel, and it stops on the floor of the big celebrity party going on that night. The door opens, and standing right there is Danny McBride, Jody Hill, and a few of their friends. I freaked out. I immediately yelled, "Oh my god, it's Kenny Ducking Powers." I saw plenty of celebrities that weekend, but he is the only one I saw that I fangirled out on. He was wasted. His friends were, too. I asked him for a picture. Even though it was a struggle to get the words out, he grabbed my phone and took a half dozen selfies of all of us in the elevator. All I could muster, over and over, was Kenny Ducking Powers. He handed me back my phone, put his hands on my shoulders, looked me in the eye, and made some joke about me trying to take a nice vacation and not even knowing Comic-Con was going to be on that weekend. I put my hands on his waist, so we were positioned like a couple of slow dancing 8th graders, and said, one final time, "It's Kenny Ducking Powers." It took me a good hour to get over the adrenaline rush, and I now love him more than ever. Edit. Picture added. Me and my now wife was at an Irish bar in Mick. I went to the toilet and when walked back a guy was stood in the way watching baseball drinking whiskey. I said excuse me and he said sorry, but looked down to hide his face. Went back to the MRS and she asked what was up. I said I've just seen Michael Keaton. I'm a huge Batman fan. She was telling me to go over and say something but the bar was packed and how he reacted to me I knew he wanted to chill and watch the baseball. She was badgering me for a few minutes all while pointing and me shaking my head and saying no. As I looked over I saw he was looking at us, but he turned away quick. My wife was facing him and still on at me saying I'm an idiot for not doing anything. She stopped talking abruptly and said he's walking over. I looked towards the bar and saw him get closer. He stepped in between me and my partner facing me. I turned to him. He put his whiskey on the bar, winked at me and walked out the bar. I think he realized what she was saying and I wasn't going to do it so he came over to show his appreciation. I've been approved by the Batman. Not a NSFW material but it's an excellent celeb encounter. My mom, rest her soul, was an absolute party animal up till the day she died. Massive lover of rock music and would go to a ton of concerts. Get backstage and we have a load of memorabilia all around the house. Anyway, one band she always disliked was Kiss. And she'd never tell me why not until you're older. Eventually I got old enough for her to tell me why she disliked Kiss. Apparently she made it backstage and as they were going on stage, Gene Simmons came up to her in full makeup, asked her name and after she replied he stated, "I'll be seeing you after the show, Susan." He then unraveled his massive tongue and flicked it a few times as he grabbed her ass. She said out of all the times in her life of being hit on by creepy men, that was the most unsettling. She does however say that had he not been in full costume it would have been a lot less creepy. I miss her crazy stories every day. I went to Miley Cyrus' 18th birthday, was hanging out with a few friends for a car show in LA and apparently this chick that was with us, who I hadn't met until that night, was dating Miley's brother. Turns out they were going to Miley's place for a party and asked us to drop them off. We dropped them off, and as we were driving away we decided, "Duck it. How many times are we gonna have a chance like this?" We turned around and hit up the chick to see if she could get us in. She said sure, and we ended up partying there for a couple hours. Hadn't seen Miley all night, and next thing I know I'm in the kitchen and I look over and she's by the sink taking a hit off a pipe. At that time she was still this perfect Christian Disney star, so it was weird seeing her smoking weed just a few feet from me. Apparently some guys nobody knew ended up sneaking into the party and grabbing a couple purses, to include Miley's, and ran off. Once that happened they kicked everyone out and we went home. I found out later that her phone was in the purse and had a video of her smoking salvia, which got released to the public and was the first of many things that changed everyone's image of her. Side note, on the ride home we ended up totaling the car cause our driver fell asleep at the wheel. It was a great night. NASCAR driver Matt Kenseth once quietly flipped me off when I was at the track before a race, if that counts. Not me, but my friend banged Mark Wahlberg at Cannes in the late 90s. They were at one of the parties. They drank. They flirted. They went to his hotel room. They boned. Pretty standard stuff for Marky Mark around that time, I reckon. My friend was super hot with perfect 10 tits and ass, so I wasn't surprised she pulled a movie star. The rapper Danny Brown got his D sucked by some random fan in the front row. Raps his first verse the whole time everyone is in shock. Stops receiving oral for the second verse. Picks her out of the crowd after the song and directs her to the green room. Met Gary Busey at an airport in Tulsa. Okay. Through a strange course of conversation in which he insulted nearly everyone, he ended with a joke. "Gary, did you ever hear about the poor family?" Me. "No. Gary, they were so poor, they had to jerk off the dog to feed the cat." He then chuckled to himself, grabbed the next taxi, and left us speechless. Formatting. I saw Kim Kardashian 6 tape. Las Vegas. I'm eating lunch with my mother when I spotted Wayne Brady also eating lunch with his mother. I waited until he finished eating before asking for a photograph. iPhones were still fairly new and my sweet mother had never really used one, so as Wayne Brady and I were posing for the picture my mother kept pressed the home button to take it. I quickly pulled the camera back up and posed again. She pressed the home button again. Once more I opened the camera app and this time Wayne Brady nicely explained that you have to press the button on the screen for the picture. You guessed it. My mother pressed the home button again, so I thought I'd be funny and chime in with, "Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke an itch?" No one laughed. It was Mother's Day. My mom didn't know the reference. Got the picture at least. Wayne Brady was a very nice,